Good morning. You're listening to Conversations with Loulou. I'm Loulou Khazan, an entrepreneur living in Dubai, an investor, a mother, and your host. My guest today is a hardworking, brilliant, and humble man who I'm proud to call a friend. Abdelaziz Al-Lughani is a serial entrepreneur and a successful one at that. He co-founded and managed Talabat.com, which ultimately got acquired by Rocket Internet for $170 million in 2015. And he's currently the co-founder and CEO of Flowered, which is a flowers and gifts e-commerce platform with big plans to eventually IPO. In parallel, he also co-founded Faith Capital, which is a venture capital practice focusing on investing in the GCC. By every description, Abdelaziz is a powerhouse. He has even helped shape the Kuwaiti government's strategy towards entrepreneurship and SMEs. You can read his full extensive bio in the show notes. So, Abdelaziz, I'm so happy that you finally agreed to do this with me. And I want to welcome you and ask you, how are you?
Thank you, Loulou. It's been, we've had many of these conversations, I would say, over the past maybe 6-7 years. But it's good to document them somewhere. Thanks for your efforts. Thanks for bringing a lot of great stories online through your podcast, and I really enjoy watching them.
Yeah, Abdelaziz, you're actually one of the few people who's not always out there in the events and on stages and in the press and the media. You're one of the very successful but silent, let's say, behind the scenes kind of guy. Is that on purpose?
Yeah, so there's a saying in the Valley, you're as good as what your last deal is, right? I remember in our conversation earlier last week, you were noting to me, now why aren't you writing anymore? I don't tweet, I don't write as much as I used to. I think as you become, maybe the word is more mature, you find less value to bring out to people, right?
Less value?
Less.
Why?
Because anything you find online is available for people, right? So unless you're gonna come out with something that's actually genuine, maybe that's why I still write, I still publish, but it's a lot less than it used to be.
So you feel already a lot of it has been covered?
I do feel a lot of it has been covered. Yes, I do feel.
But you bring a unique view, though, from the from the Kuwaiti ecosystem first, and from the GCC side.
Yes, I think the size of our community, despite having a 450 million population in the Arab world, but the size of the community is relatively small, and many of us already know each other. I'll probably you inspired me to write something actually earlier last week, and maybe we'll zoom into that into a conversation.
I'm so happy to hear. You're the second person that says this. There's one person whom I'm interviewed, and he told me you've inspired me to start my own podcast. I'm like, wow, that's good. That's good. So. I read some of your writing actually on Medium. You have published some posts and you have some really excellent articles. It's a few, but I think you should definitely write more. What are you writing about?
So I think one topic that is concerning and alarming to me today is the amount of media and publicity investors and VCs have in this part of the world. If you look at the founder's journey, those who actually made it big either in IPOing, exiting, or even just generating very high revenues, it saddens me that the founders actually get very little credit of that story. and most of the publicity and PR goes for the investors. It's as if the investors built the company when they've actually only written a check, right? In many cases.
Okay, and you feel that it's the case here, or you're talking in general?
I think in this part of the world, the value add of VC funds is questionable. I think they are very mindful. Well, I myself am an investor, but I'm unable to provide the value I wish I would provide as a VC professional because I'm not there yet, right?
You're not?
I'm not there yet. I can't do that. This is why I don't manage fiduciary money. I purely invest.
Also, Faith Capital is personal funds.
It's my partner and I, his family, were very supportive of the efforts we had. It's a holding co, and we invest only from our balance sheet.
I see.
The reason being is I don't believe that I can add the value I wish for today because of my dedication and commitment to Flowered. I think that generally speaking, VCs are mindful and that they can add a lot more value to the portfolio companies they are investing in. That comes in the form of technical and strategic guidance through real value generation teams. Contribution to top line should not be والا introductions, cold emails, or phone calls. They should be opening up significant shelf space for their product and services to be distributed at scale. We need to access proper talent. This is not just a local, regional challenge. This is a global challenge right now, right? But I think, if you just obviously, in addition to contribution of capital, money-wise, but I think the capital part is pretty much covered. But when you take a deeper dive in how much of technical and strategic guidance is being added, I think, and I know great VCs in this part of the world, but the value is very much limited to one or two people in that fund. And if you distribute that ala 30, 40 portfolio companies, you do the math. How much value can you really add?
Do you feel it's maybe a fund size issue? That maybe they can't necessarily afford to hire people that like a big support team, or maybe they don't see that it's their job to provide this kind of support?
Okay, so there are two folds, right? One is the value add you're getting from a VC. And then the second part is the publicity and PR that I feel founders are undermined with. Okay, on the VC side, I think they're very mindful and they would like to add more value. But given the sizes of AUMs, without sovereigns really moving the needle, it's very hard for VC funds to also attract the right talent that would add value to those portfolio companies. I think that's one fold of the problem. Number two, it's there are probably a handful with real entrepreneurial experience, but most of the VCs in the region are pure finance and investment bankers, right? They would probably design or architect a good term sheet, but beyond that, we've all listened to conversations of investment professionals that when you speak operationally or try relating to logistics, customer care, marketing, operations, fulfillment, this is like, it's like when you're in school and your decision risk analysis professor tries talking to you about your gut feeling, how worthless it is in doing business. When in reality, without this gut feeling, no matter how much research you do, if you try executing without that strong gut feeling, to me, it's worthless. right? So it's like a professor teaching you how to do business in the real world.
Entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's a feeling I get in a lot of the times. So this is why I feel in the VCs are aware and that they need to add a lot more value than what they're currently providing. And I believe that some of them have already started acting on it, which is great. But I would also say that a majority of them and cut the crap and just be more direct and say it out loud and be bold, have the balls to say, I won't add beyond capital anything to you. Just be straightforward, right? Rather than promise me the sun, the moon, and then
it's difficult for them to differentiate themselves, though, right? Because initially, like when I started fundraising in 2012, there were only like 3 or 4. Now there's obviously more. Still not too many, but there's more. And how do they differentiate themselves, right? And everybody says we love founders or we invest in great founders. Well, who wants to invest in a bad founder anyway?
I think.
But like, how would you differentiate yourself then as a VC?
I think it's the conversation you have with the founder, right? Amongst one of my best experiences I've had in the region is a retreat with the 500 startups companies that I had the privilege to attend last year, 2019, and it was for me mind-blowing. And the conversations you have are real, are tangible, are challenges or experiences that you as a founder face firsthand, rather than someone talk to you about it from reading an Andreessen Horowitz or Ben Horowitz book, right? When in reality, that's the closest thing to reality he's ever or she's ever touched, right?
So what was the format?
The format of the retreat was a lot of panels, but beyond the panels, it's the side conversations that you had for a weekend. And I felt it was very, very enriching because it's a two-way kind of learning format. And you get to meet a lot of great founders that in some cases you're learning from, and other cases sharing your insights with, who I feel in the VCs actually miss that. And if you look at
so there were no VCs. It was only startup founders.
But there are VCs, but beyond the funding conversation, there aren't any conversations, right? And I think that's how you can really differentiate yourself. It's your ability to learn. But even when it comes to them having conversations on tools, for example, they're outdated, right? They still talk about heat maps. وعمال هو مخترع الذرة. Obviously they're outdated, and I think that your ability to bridge that academia school versus the practical, more vocational execution is the best value you can bring.
So what you're saying is be humble, basically, and acknowledge your strengths and weaknesses as a VC, and don't overstate, let's say, your strength.
Yes, but هذا part.
Be honest.
This is the first part about VCs, right? And then the other part is about founders, because I feel they are not given the right attention. And it's the founders who've gone through the hard times, the good times, all the real learnings, right? Instead of walking into, without naming any conferences, but most regional conferences, the key panelists, the keynotes, and the biggest panels almost always end up going for investors. And in reality, if I were a founder attending one of those sessions, I would want to have a chat with Loulou and tell me, how did Nebbish end up getting acquired with your announcement this week, right? What kind of challenges were you going through in the past 3 years, right?
I think, for your point, I mean, I've seen, to be honest, to be fair, I've seen entrepreneurs on panels, but I've seen the same entrepreneurs on panels. That's the issue. So usually when you go out to these events, there's the usual suspects, the usual people from the VCs, and the usual. There's a couple of entrepreneurs. I was one of them at some point, so I want to be honest here. I don't want to be like a hypocrite. At the time when I founded Nebbish in 2012, there was a lot of press, and sometimes as a founder you get sucked in. Honestly, sometimes in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have done all of these panels and conferences, but I didn't know any better at the time. So I don't know what was I trying to say. I forgot my point. But I think it's usually the same people. That's what I'm trying to say. And if you're like a Kareem, for example, like if you're a Mudassir, yes, of course, everybody's going to want to talk to you. And fair enough, obviously, you've done a massive achievement. Yeah. But there's a lot of others that don't really get any share of voice, as you said.
And it doesn't need to be only on a regional magnitude. If you just zoom into your local community and just
You're right.
there are founders in Saudi Arabia who've been there for the past 6, 7, 8 years, and I can almost guarantee you that VC funds that are a year old are today a lot more popular than all of these founders.
You're right.
Imagine within a year. والله قبل سنة ما يعرف Chinese VC حقه. It's like talking Chinese to him.
Yeah.
And he's now I feel in this amplifying, this big echo around VCs is good. It creates more awareness, obviously, hopefully making your pipeline a lot stronger. But I feel that a lot of journeys, a lot of mentors should actually be the founders themselves, rather than an investment professional whom a year ago was only talking about bonds and today is trying to teach us how to scale an online business.
With an attitude.
With an attitude.
With an attitude. I spoke to someone who recently, actually he's been a VC, but he's recently launched a new fund. And I was having a chat with him, and I was asking him, what are you trying to change? What are you going to do differently? And he mentioned something which I found interesting. He said that usually VCs get all the credit, and the LPs, the limited partners, the people that actually fund these funds, don't get any credit.
Yes.
And now you're saying also that maybe the founders themselves don't really get that much credit. So how do you solve this?
I think we need to be more conscious. We need maybe to start talking about media outlets and highlight to them the real learnings. I think that maybe we need to write more, right? And kind of take notes about history. And if today Kareem's story, there's a lot you can write about as a founder. Instead of wait for someone like Chris, whom you've interviewed, to take the time and actually write about you.
Write a book.
Hey, and I feel that yes, ourselves as founders or investors, we can definitely take more time and start really noting our history.
So you should continue your writing.
I am. I'm going to write about those VCs.
We started this conversation by saying you don't have any more value to offer. So there you go. There is a lot.
I hope so.
So how are things at Flowered? I mean, last time you and I spoke, I mean, you joined 2 years ago.
Yes. So I invested in this company around 2.5 years ago. It was a small company called q8flowers.com. It was 3 years ago. And management back then did not feel that they are ready to take this journey forward as we had invested in. I found myself still wanting to go through this journey again. I rolled up my sleeves and here I am. So fast forward 2 years and a half, we obviously started a new company with a new brand. Q8 Flowers was quite limiting in our expansion plans. So we called it Flowered. من flowers ورد.
ورد flower, okay.
Yes.
So ورد is a flower in Arabic for...
Yes.
Okay.
And it's full-fledged e-commerce. We think two key reasons were behind our decision to do that, not a marketplace. Number one is customer experience. Because you're not really purchasing for your own use, it's most of the time gifting someone. So you have two customers, and there is just so much mis-expectation management that happens on marketplaces. Having full control over your experience was very important to us. Number two, unit economics. If you take the lifetime value of a flower purchaser and only take like a 10% margin of that, you end up with a very small lifetime value as a company for each customer. So owning the full margin, with the exception of maybe growing our own flowers in different farms, maybe that's the only supply chain exception we don't have. The rest of the supply chain is fully in-house, all the way to the last mile delivery.
And you spoke about lifetime value of a flower customer. I assume someone that buys flowers for quite some time, right?
Yes, around 12 years, 12 to 14 years, actually.
12 to 14 years.
Yes.
And then what? He doesn't buy his wife flowers anymore after that?
It's interesting, and you're absolutely right. The culture in our part.
I am right. Okay.
It's gifting, right? Whereas the culture and consumer behavior in Europe or in the US is more actually for personal consumption. It's the flower they want to keep in the house. It's not occasionally on your birthday or so.
What got you excited? I mean, you were investing at the time, and you had, we always talk about opportunity cost, right? You can put your time in this or in that, or like, I'm sure after your successes in Talabat, even though you had left by the time they exited, but still you were part of the company. And so why did you choose to spend your time and put your effort in flowers? What's the reason? Is it like you like flowers, or you felt it's a good business to be in?
Okay, so 3 reasons, honestly. Flowers was not any of them. To me, it's the passion to really create and deliver a great value proposition in the communities we live in. That's the key drive. But on top of that, number one, alhamdulillah, I was a millionaire by 26, right? But I learned a lot after Talabat, right? The investors were not as friendly as they are today.
You think they're friendly today?
I think the terms have changed and are skewed better towards the entrepreneur when it comes to valuations and firm belief in the founder's alignment of interest long term. I think that's generally been part of the awareness that has been created in the ecosystem over the past 10 years.
And there's a bit more competition now as well. There's more money competing on startups.
Mindful of that, for number one, I feel that I still have the energy or passion to actually go through this journey again. Number two, there aren't so many serial entrepreneurs in the region, right? I think while we have that energy, it's really worth in that we put our minds to a cause we feel there is a great opportunity to, and hopefully make it big. It doesn't need to end up with an exit or an IPO. But the scale and the magnitude we think of, with the mindset we come with today, is very different. The learnings, the experience we have today is very different from my time in Talabat in 2007, for example, right? Or 2008 with a 9, with a 10. Lastly, it is a big market, right? So cut flowers is a $1.5 billion market bil Khalij on its own. Yes, in the Gulf, and 99% of that is offline. There are local attempts for online flower destinations, but there's no real market leader who's basically monopolized this industry yet. After operating for 2 years right now, 2 years and a half, we're really proud. We have a strong, very strong dominant position in every market we operate in. This is primarily why it's led us to start thinking and we expand beyond the region. Hopefully by end of 2020, we would be covering all the major cities in the Gulf. And then Q1 2021, you'll hopefully see us in other continents.
So is this what drives you?
Executed properly than any other asset class. I think I also stories fill in history books, money fill in your bank account. Filling in your bank account lets you do what you really and ultimately want to do. Helps you create the real impact you want to have, rather than wait on governments or investors for them to help you do that, right? But I think being more, I'm conscious, and the self-interest is, at the end of the day, what I'm after, which hopefully translates to more public interest. But I think filling in my bank account today is important so that I can hopefully move on to more developmental kind of efforts later on in my life.
You clearly seem to enjoy the growth, like the start and the growth phase. I mean, clearly you're not in it because of your passion for flowers. So it's. So you know what? That's actually good advice. I mean, you hear all of this advice all the time. Follow your passion and you know what I mean? Like solve a problem that you're facing and all of that. But look at you. I mean, there you go. You looked at something very opportunistically. Here's a big market, it's very fragmented. Right?
I tend to believe that, honestly. And if I were to double click on what you just said, in terms of opportunities for founders, we are a $3.5 trillion economy in the Arab world, of which 29 billion is only online. Well, from that 29 billion, so it's less than a fraction of a percentage, right? And of that 29 billion, 21 billion is hotels and travel. And then
hotels and what? Sorry, I didn't hear that. Hotels and
travel.
And
travel.
Travel. Okay.
Yes. And then
which is now non-existent, actually, almost.
And then you have fashion, you have consumer electronics, you have food and beverage, but the rest is a desert. Seriously, a desert. Any other industry or vertical is relatively nascent online. I'm sure you'll have attempts in different countries, but in terms of having that dominant lion's share market position, no. There are so many other opportunities. I'm investing. We continue to invest in those, but I feel.
Sorry, excuse me.
But I feel that having that bird's eye view and understanding what the real opportunities are, there are so many low-hanging fruits that don't really need your AI and big data or virtual reality or augmented. Fine, these emerging technologies obviously are important, but in our part of the world, there are so many low-hanging fruits.
Can you give an example?
Yes, عندك eyewear.
Eyewear, okay.
Eyewear, whether it's contact lenses or sunglasses or medical ones.
There is a startup now trying to tackle this.
There you go.
Did you invest in it?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, I did. But there are glasses, there are laundries, there are water sports, there are obviously groceries has become a lot more, has picked up significantly, especially during the COVID crisis. For so many verticals, ad networks.
Ad networks.
Huge market. There are so many native apps that today depend solely on really big ad networks, global ad networks. But in this part of the world, it's empty. It's empty. Why wouldn't someone come up and say, well, I want to hook up all these apps, Nebbish or Flower, to all the others, and I want to start an ad network around them. I'll buy the real estate, or I'll sublease it to X and Y and Z. Pets is another example. There's a company I'm currently actually looking at for pet supplies. I think we spoke about it, you and I.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
There are so many verticals that are still untapped. If you just keep an eye out, I don't feel that you need to relate so much to the product or service itself.
Do you feel entrepreneur maybe? You were trying to convince me to launch a new startup, basically, and to stay an entrepreneur, which I'm considering. Do you feel founders today try to, especially maybe in this region, because blockchain, AI, and all of that stuff is very sexy in the Western world? Maybe they feel like if they go with I don't know, a pet startup or something, it might not be as glamorous or as exciting maybe to VCs here, or because I mean I'm not a VC, so I don't know how they think or what they look for.
Yeah. So for me, honestly, and a lot of the VCs are dear friends of mine. We speak regularly. I co-invest. My partner and I, through Faith Capital, we co-invest مع بعض. And size matters, right? And if you look at the biggest startups of the region, they're not doing something disrupting the globe, right? They are just executing very established ideas and startups around the world in this part of the world. Very simple. The biggest.
Yeah.
من كريم وانت نازل.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. It's just making sure, and like Mark Pincus from Ginza says, and if your competition is doing something, I don't like him so much, but I like this line specifically.
This is the gaming app, right?
Yes, yeah.
Jenga, is it? Zynga.
Zynga,
yeah.
Yes. He goes, and if your competition is doing something better, copy it by the pixel, and then take your ego and shove it somewhere else, right?
Okay.
I think over here, the great opportunities we have is there are so many verticals that are still untapped. think you're as big as what your vision is. You'll only attract talent as big as what your vision is. Think of that magnitude, and I think VCs will appreciate it.
So you would recommend for an entrepreneur to dominate their market, and then start looking at the region, and then potentially at the world. So start with dominating your own market, or
Yes.
would you feel like a better strategy would be, okay, we need to launch in UAE, but in 6 months we have to be in Saudi, or so what's the recommendation on your end?
Yeah, I like to keep things simple. I'll go back to the original kind of lean startup Eric Ries diagram, right? The build, learn, measure, right? It's that triangle.
It's the lean startup.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's kind of where I sit in terms of mindset on how to scale. Demonstrate local capability and success. Be mindful, and scale at growth is very different from scale locally, right? We claim we're a 450 million Arab population, but doing business in Beirut is different from Kuwait, is different from Dubai. Hell, even in Dubai versus Abu Dhabi, it's also different, right?
That's true.
That's in the same country. I think be mindful, and scale at growth is different. When the culture really differs from one population to the other, hire or build a really great team as you scale. Always try to leave some room and space for growth, for you to groom champions as your team expands. Be mindful of that. Yeah.
Should you think of an exit from the early days?
I wouldn't, honestly, and it's not in your control or hands. But I would do all the right things to build a company that lasts forever. And if you build that company, you'll always be ready, right? If you don't take legal shortcuts, if you keep your books clean, if you put your governance in order, if you select your investors wisely, execute on the strategy, vision, start with a product, but maybe later on have one vision with multiple products, scale properly and demonstrate your capability of scaling, have the right team. I know it's a cliche, but what I mean by team is it's not just business and technical skills. It's complementary skills. It's complementary experience. The Loulou comes from an entrepreneurial experience. Maybe having someone corporate who's a lot more disciplined is actually appropriate for Loulou to balance her creativity. Maybe if I have someone who's just a modeling guy on Excel, who knows his numbers, knows his shit very well, is probably someone that I relate to better. It's not the function, it's the experience, complementary experience as well that I would look for. But I think if you're mindful of that, you don't really need to worry about exiting. Instead, if you really want to create a liquidity event for your shareholders, and you're thinking as big as the region or multiple regions around the world, what's in your hand is IPOing the business. That's something.
Outside of the region, though.
Yes, outside of the region, but I would also be aware, I would be just conscious that there are many regional attempts right now for attracting and promoting local startups to go public. I know our friends in Tadawul in Saudi, for example, are working on a great initiative to support local companies in Saudi or in the region of scaling, and are being mindful of the listing requirements to be a lot more lean for technology startups.
That would be so helpful, by the way, to entrepreneurs in the region.
Absolutely. The good thing is an IPO is something you can decide how you're going to do, right? You don't need to wait for X and Y to actually acquire you or start flirting or dancing around the thought to take a year. I'd maybe take 2 years, but overall, I think an IPO liquidity event is a lot more appropriate.
It's great for founders, really.
Well, the good thing about IPOs is companies monopolizing or taking lead can actually create a lot of consolidation or M&A activities. If I were today at a certain $1 million threshold of revenue, and I plan to IPO in a year and a half, or throughout the next 6 months, I would go on a spree for acquiring inorganic growth. That will cause a lot of M&A activity to happen in the region. So I think it's quite necessary, especially with the current circumstances, falling oil prices, COVID, government deficits all over the region, and the lira at 10,000 per dollar.
That's today. It might be 15. Like by the time I publish this.
Yeah.
That's very unfortunate, by the way.
I know.
That's very, very unfortunate.
I know, but we should also be, again, despite these challenges, this is where an IPO and M&A or consolidation can really benefit.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Many great companies.
Absolutely.
In Lebanon, there are great companies that are on the global map, not just on the regional map.
On the startup scene?
Yes.
I mean, you have Adrami. Obviously, I interviewed Ali Habib.
Yeah. I was referring to Ali actually.
Yeah. He's a solid entrepreneur, though. He's someone who's, Adrami is his 5th business, so he's someone who's been through that process quite a few times. So it is a learning curve. Abdul Aziz,
someone like Ali is probably a lot more useful for a founder to sit down with.
Absolutely.
Than someone with a fat check, right?
Absolutely.
And maybe that kind of triggered the first conversation we had.
Absolutely. I think we need the Ali's, the Mudassirs, people that have, the few people that have had an exit, obviously like Jabbar and Fadi and all of those to be making these investments. So you're one of, there's actually how many, like maybe 5, let's say big, 4 or 5 big tech investment exits in the region.
Yes.
So Talabat was in 2015. That was 5 years ago. That was something. Did you? I think I always wondered, like, the amount of confidence you need to have as a founder to kind of do this sort of negotiation and get these numbers. I mean, obviously now you have Kareem, which sort of broke all types of barriers. But at the time in 2015, the only baseline you had was Maktoub. Exactly.
Yes, indeed. I actually wrote about Maktoub when it exited. I was writing a newsletter, a quarterly newsletter for our customers in Talabat. And I remember telling myself, I have to write about this news, although it has nothing to do with the best sandwich or what new restaurants we had, but I still mentioned Maktoub's exit on that quarter. Well, I think that's what really kind of also affected my mindset of thinking more regional rather than just focusing on our local market.
Nice.
But to your point about confidence, we are an accumulation of our past experiences today. We show, even to our loved ones, the side we want to show. Right? So I'm sure we're not all saints or angels, right? We all have our mistakes, but we choose what side to show our loved ones, our colleagues, and our investors. صح? I think having your accumulated experience with some scars that you've earned on the way validates a lot of the bluffing you can get away with, right? Then at that time, I got on a call immediately, actually, with one of the first investors with Maktub. وقلت له, this is what I want to do. I don't know you, but you seem to speak a lot about what you've done, and I want to take the same route. I think in having first-hand experience is good, but also investing your time with great founders who've gone through even more experiences than you have will hopefully also maybe not get you 100% of the experience, but at least give you a lot more confidence in how you approach things.
And did the team, sorry, go ahead.
Totally, go ahead.
No, I said, did the team at the time do all the negotiating, or you had advisors? Or
Mohammed, my partner, was leading Talabat at that effort. At that time, I was a non-exec back then, but we did have an advisor as well.
Okay.
A third-party advisor who was negotiating on behalf of the sellers with the buyers.
Okay.
As there are so many other circumstances, so I think what we did in the past, the exit, if the exit is a mark of success, then it's definitely not only hard work or being smart. The third component is, people call it luck. Some of us call it
being prepared.
Some call it market conditions. But I think whatever you call it, that element of luck is also very important, right? And the whole region was going through consolidation, and there was primarily one buyer. So that's when a winner really takes all. If you had a lion's share of that market, there was no one else but you to acquire.
Yeah.
And that's where today at Flowered, our revenue is actually higher than what we sold Talabat for.
Wow. Higher than what you sold Talabat for? Or no, higher than Talabat's revenue at the time?
Talabat's revenue at the time, yes.
Okay.
I think, and imagine that was created over a period of 9 years versus what was created in Flowered over 2 years and a half.
Wow.
This is how lucky we are, right? There are more internet users. COVID just gave us a head start for the next 10 years. I would say e-commerce penetration. The reference I have is from the US, but the previous 8 weeks, e-commerce penetration is higher than the cumulative 10 past years.
Wow.
So I think we've seen that significantly in the region, and more recently as well.
We will see it here. I was speaking, I interviewed Rayan Karake, he works at Google, and he was saying that we are a region that leapfrogs. It takes us so long to adopt something, but when we adopt it fully. Right. And he was talking about like smartphone penetration, for example, but still, he mentioned that there's 200 million people in the Arab world that still don't have access to internet. So there's still a big gap.
It's okay. 250 is still a lot.
Yeah, it's still a lot. That's true.
And of those 200 million, I would probably say 50% are below 10 years old. But you're okay. Don't worry.
Probably. That's true. I love our chat. You're very open, honest. I really admire that. You're also the one more thing. You and I had a like a WhatsApp message about was your ad at Flowered. You did recently a Father's Day ad.
Yeah.
Which was really, really cool. And I said, and I mentioned it to you, and you said, yeah, like fathers are underrated. Are you underrated? You're a father of 3?
Father of three, yes. And
So is fatherhood underrated?
I think Father's Day is significantly underrated. So this is something we like experimenting with in Flowered, right? So at the lowest of your chain, of your value chain, are the key functional kind of values. You always want to make sure you have the right product mix. You want to make sure you have the right pricing. You want to make sure you have the best value for money in terms of quality and pricing, fastest turnaround time for an order, best technology, user experience. All of that is what everyone else competes on. This is basic, and you really want to score high and the best on it. Well, alhamdulillah, we think that we actually do. But beyond that functional layer is how do you really self-actualize your gifting and occasions with your customers? How can you really see it mirroring the people? There's a great chart by Bain. It's called Customer Value Assessment. This is an exercise we do internally. I would encourage many people to actually look through it, especially for consumer-facing web and mobile apps. So when we do that, we realize that people associate more with their occasions. So we have
with their
occasions.
Okay.
For example, there are birthdays happening every day, right? Why aren't we the best go-to destination for that? But there are also so many other occasions that we've experimented with. We've experimented last year with more than 60 occasions. Wow. So every week we have an occasion that we celebrate. And these occasions are all public. The private ones are Loulou's birthday, where Aziz will send Loulou maybe something. The public ones are like Father's Day. It was one of those occasions that we experimented with. And we're happy in many people actually followed us. We were also, we try having that witty sense of humor.
It was really good. It was really well done. It was really well done. Right. Any closing remarks? Anything you'd like to end with? Any advice for entrepreneurs or even VCs that are listening?
I think the region overall has gone through a lot of uncertainties with COVID. Right, there are many companies that have folded. There are many funds that were uncertain to how this effect or impact would be long term on the companies they're in. Some companies are ending up consolidating. But I feel it's during these hard times that these events bring the best of what's in you. So I think resilient founders, VC funds, whatever, those whom are resilient, who are defiant, independent, and really want to change the status quo, will make it through and weather this storm. We've seen great companies honestly pick up, who took advantage of the huge e-commerce penetration increase that's happened. I feel that in all of these bad situations and whatever happens, there's always something good that you can come out of with. I'm conscious. I'm very grateful, honestly, for what we've achieved so far with Flowered, and I think that, and I think founders, generally speaking, take advantage of these hard times. If it's not working, you need to close shop and move on. If this is your calling, then you really need to make the best out of it, and I truly believe, and then you will make the best out of it.
I think you still have another 4 or 5 companies in you. You're still young.
I hope so. I still jog at 5 a.m. and I still play root at 8.
Thank you so much, Abdulaziz. I loved this conversation. Really, thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Shukran, Loulou. Thank you for hosting myself. Thank you for hosting the other great people you've had. I've learned from them firsthand and continue to really enjoy those conversations.
Great.
I wish to see you in better conditions.
Yeah. Thank you for everyone who's listening. This was episode 8 of Conversations with Loulou. I would love it for you to subscribe to the podcast on Conversations with Loulou on all the podcast players and also on my YouTube channel. I'd really appreciate it if you like the show, to share it with your friends and comment and send me your feedback. If you want to sponsor the show, you can email me on loulou.khazen@gmail.com. Have a great day and stay safe, everyone.